But neither of these conditions are present in the Turkish case. The EU-Turkish relations are not at their very best, as we all know, because neither side is really very confident about whether they want to have a marriage. Obviously there is no strong EU support for democratization in Turkey right now. As I have shown you some findings, the Justice and Development Party, even though it has experienced a major transformation and it has embraced democracy in many ways, it does not have very strong democratic values with respect to many specific issues. So, what happens if we don't have these conditions? Then I would expect then the moderating actor to retain its own values, semi-democratic values, and also adapt and reproduce the center's authoritarian characteristics. And I think this is what we have been observing in Turkey since 2007, mostly 2008. With respect to many issues, there's a major difference between the discourse of the Justice and Development Party now and its discourse 5-6 years ago in its first term, when it used a much more liberal democratic discourse. But now it is reproducing in many ways a pro-state discourse, maybe a more conservative version of it, its own version of it, but a very pro-state and quite authoritarian discourse. So because it is very convenient actually for a hegemonic actor to use the existing semi-democratic institutions, whether this is a authoritarian legal system, authoritarian laws, whether it is an authoritarian institutions of higher education, like the Directorate of Higher Education in Turkey. It controls everything about higher education in Turkey. It's very convenient for an hegemonic actor to use these institutions. Or the 10% electoral threshold in Turkey. It's very hard to argue that this is compatible with democracy, but it serves the ruling political party as well as other major parties as well. There is no attempt to remove that. Or an authoritarian secularism. The Turkish state is still involved in religious affairs. It regulates, controls religion, and you could expect a democratic religious party to try to transform this model by decentralizing the institutions that regulate religion, by making them more representative for Muslim minorities. And so on. But it is actually convenient to have these institutions if you are a hegemonic actor. And in Turkey, of course, the secular actors demoderate. They also become, that's a very important part of the picture as well, they became uncooperative. We don't see that they are being cooperative. So, the conclusion then is, under these circumstances, the scenario C2 is you need cooperation to build a new democratic center. If a new democratic center cannot be constructed by a hegemonic actor unilaterally, then you need cooperation. It needs to be done cooperatively. Cooperation between religious and secular actors, or other actors, depending on the cleavage in any specific country, is necessary to rebuild a more democratic center. So, and I will conclude with this. So, what this says about Middle Eastern countries post-Arab Spring. So, then we can think of Turkey has a semi-democratic center, but many of these countries, they have authoritarian centers. So in trying to understand these countries, we cannot just ask whether Mohammed Morsi or Muslim Brothers are moderate actors or are they radical Islamist actors. But we have to go beyond that question, and we have to ask whether they have the conditions that are necessary for a hegemonic actor, maybe Muslim Brothers can become hegemonic actor in these countries, whether they have these necessary conditions to become to have sufficient power to build a democratic center. Do they have the willingness to do so, and do they have the power actually to do so? Or if that is not, that doesn't seem to be very likely, then we have to think about much more how secular and religious actors in these countries can cooperate. How we can facilitate more cooperation between secular and religious actors so that they can come together and build the institutions and norms of democratic centers. Thank you very much. This is all I want to say.
I saw Gulul sneak in on the side. I don't know if she wants to come and do the keys and this, but why don't we go ahead? Does anyone have, I mean, as observers, take it from the top here?
You mentioned that the two issues, the women's issue and the Kurdish issue, are not politically discussed sufficiently. How about the media, films, and avant-garde TV shows? Is that ahead of the way, possibly? How is that?